WhatsApp filed a complaint in federal court Tuesday, pushing back against international technology company NSO Group. In an op-ed for the Washington Post, WhatsApp Vice President Will Cathcart said NSO is behind a recent cyber attack that targeted human rights activists, journalists, and others. Last May, the company urged its users to update the app after they detected hacking attempts through a vulnerability in the video calling feature. They are now looking to hold NSO accountable under U.S. laws. Cathcart says that while the attack was, quote, highly sophisticated, NSO was not as successful in covering its tracks. Ian Scherr joins us now from San Francisco. He is an editor-at-large for CNET. Ian, thanks so much for being with us. On Tuesday, Will Cathcart wrote that this should be a, quote, wake-up call for tech companies, the government, and internet users. What exactly is WhatsApp saying we should take away from this attack?
A lot of it is about how these services are being used increasingly by surveillance states, by different countries, and by hackers to really try and target people all over the place, right? There's been a lot of conversation, particularly about Facebook and WhatsApp and all of these different social media sites, about how they really helped activists during stuff like the Arab Spring and Black Lives Matter and all these other things. But there's another side to all of this, which is that the people who are working for intelligence agencies are getting really hip to understanding how these services work and are actually finding ways to hack into them to try and get information out of them. And that is something that WhatsApp, at least publicly, is trying to say they don't want to have happen and that they want to stop from happening.
The level of transparency here is really interesting. What is the motive behind WhatsApp being so transparent about this incident and subsequent investigation?
I think a lot of it is that this is a very kind of cut and dry thing in the public, right? Targeting human rights activists and journalists is something that a lot of people don't find very good. And this is remember that WhatsApp's owned by Facebook.
Right.
And any other types of these things, you consider all of the drama that exists around Facebook right now and all of the criticism we've written about on CNET so many times. At this point, any time that they can say, well, we're standing up for the good guys, that they're going to look good. And I think that's at least part of why they're doing this.
So the lawsuit alleges NSO violated the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Does the company face any obstacles in its fight to hold NSO accountable?
It's an international firm, and as much as we would like to think that international law is something you can lean on, at the end of the day, it's really about whether the other country is willing to actually hold these companies accountable, and oftentimes they're not. So I think what will be really interesting is that even if a judgment comes down, and let's say that WhatsApp gets something in the United States, that has no meaning that they're going to get anything overseas. So in a lot of ways, this is about publicity, and it's about trying to kind of cajole the rest of the world into thinking, well, WhatsApp is really looking out for my safety because they're going after other countries and companies all around the world to stop them from hacking us. And that, maybe that'll work, maybe it won't. I'm curious to see.
Yeah. So what do you do if you're a WhatsApp user? How concerned should you be about your privacy?
You should always be concerned. I mean, at this point, we've learned there's nothing that isn't hackable. And part of it comes down to if you're going to use stuff for communication that you feel like could be secret or needs to be protected in some way, then you need to be really smart about how you use it. And that's just part of life in the digital age. I think we've seen that there is nothing out there that is safe anymore. And that's really sad, but it's also something that people have been warning about for years.
Right, the reality of the world that we live in now. I also want to ask you about Twitter. On Wednesday, CEO Jack Dorsey said the social media platform will ban political ads. How does that move compare to Facebook's approach to political advertising?
It's the complete opposite. It's really fascinating to see Twitter try and kind of set itself apart so dramatically. So Facebook's been defending itself for quite a while now, where Mark Zuckerberg says that these ads that politicians post that could have falsehoods or outright lies in them, that they are an important part of the conversation in this country, and banning them or somehow trying to reduce them would be bad, right? He says he doesn't want to be the arbiter of truth. And to be fair, Twitter doesn't want to be either. So instead of allowing them and allowing politicians to basically post whatever they want, truth or not, Twitter's saying, you know what, we're not going to let you post anything. You can want to post about your cat, and you can't do it. You're going to have to you're going to have to do it the way that everyone else does. You're going to have to put up a tweet that everyone wants to share. And that's a really fascinating idea. Of course, it means that Twitter may lose a little bit of money here, but they gain a ton of publicity out of being a company that says, you know what, we're not going to get involved in this fight.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it there. What kind of problems is the company hoping to address with this decision?
I think that ultimately they don't want to look like a place where you can't trust what happens on there. And that's increasingly a problem. We keep talking about how there are bots and trolls and all of these things, and Twitter allows you to be anonymous, which makes it 10 times harder to tell whether someone's being authentic or not. And all of these companies, Facebook and Twitter, keep pulling down bad behavior from troll farms and all this other stuff. So in some way, this is a mark of the good, right? They get to look good for a moment, that, hey, they're trying to stand up and stop some of this stuff in a meaningful way. I'm really curious to see how Facebook responds ultimately to all of this as well.
Yeah, it will be interesting to watch that. All right, Ian Scher for us. Ian, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.